Nestled high on the Castilian plateau in the heart of the Iberian Peninsula, Madrid stands today as one of Europe's most dynamic and captivating capital cities. Yet this sprawling metropolis of culture, power, and passion began as something far humbler. A small, almost forgotten settlement clinging to the banks of the Manzanares River, largely overlooked by the great civilizations that swept across ancient Europe. What makes Madrid's story so extraordinary is not just where it ended up, but the astonishing journey it took to get there. Sitting at an elevation of roughly 650 meters above sea level, Madrid occupies a geographically commanding position at the very center of the peninsula, a location that would ultimately prove decisive in shaping its destiny. Over the course of thousands of years, this land witnessed prehistoric tribes, Roman legions, Moorish architects, Christian crusaders, Habsburg emperors, and revolutionary citizens. Each chapter left its mark. This is the full, sweeping story of Madrid. Long before Madrid existed as a city, the land beneath it was already alive with human presence. Archaeological discoveries across the Madrid region reveal evidence of Paleolithic communities dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Stone tools, animal bones, and ancient remains found along the Manzanares River Valley confirm that early humans recognized this territory's natural advantages, its fresh water, fertile ground, and strategic elevation. As centuries pass, Neolithic and Bronze Age communities established more permanent roots, gradually developing agricultural practices and social structures across the central Iberian plateau. By the final centuries before the Common Era, a Celtic people known as the Carpetani had emerged as the dominant inhabitants of this region. Skilled in metalwork and organized into tribal communities, the Carpetanis built hilltop settlements and cultivated a distinct cultural identity rooted in the land itself. Though largely undocumented in written history, these early peoples established the geographic and cultural foundations upon which every future civilization in the Madrid region would eventually build. As Rome extended its reach across the Iberian Peninsula beginning in the 2nd century before the Common Era, the central plateau gradually fell under Roman influence. The Carpetani tribes, who had long called this highland home, were absorbed into the expanding Roman province of Hispania. Roman administrators, soldiers, and settlers reshaped the landscape with roads, aqueducts, and organized settlements. The most significant urban center in this region was Complutum, located in what is today Alcalá de Henares, just east of modern Madrid. Complutum flourished as a proper Roman city, complete with forums, temples, and sophisticated infrastructure, drawing population and commerce to its streets. Meanwhile, the area that would eventually become Madrid remained a quiet, unremarkable corner of the plateau. Without a major river crossing, strategic military value, or significant resources, it attracted little Roman investment. While urbanization transformed much of Hispania, this particular stretch of land waited quietly for its moment in history. As Roman authority crumbled across the Western Empire during the 5th century of the Common Era, the Iberian Peninsula entered a profound period of transformation. Germanic tribes, most notably the Visigoths, swept southward and gradually established dominance over the peninsula, filling the power vacuum left by Rome's collapse. The central Castilian plateau, including the region surrounding what would eventually become Madrid, shifted under this new Visigothic governance. Toledo, located not far from the Madrid region, became the Visigothic capital, making the surrounding plateau strategically significant for the first time. During this transitional era, Christianity deepened its roots across Iberia, becoming the defining spiritual and cultural force shaping communities throughout the central plateau. Visigothic rulers embraced Catholic Christianity following their conversion, cementing a religious identity that would profoundly influence the region for centuries. However, this relatively stable Visigothic order would not last forever. By the early 8th century, forces from North Africa were preparing a conquest that would dramatically reshape everything once again. When the Islamic forces swept across the Iberian Peninsula in 711 Common Era, they fundamentally transformed every corner of the land. Within decades, Muslim rulers controlled vast stretches of territory, and by the 9th century, Muhammad I of Cordoba recognized the strategic importance of the Manzanares River Valley. Around 852 Common Era, he ordered the construction of a small but militarily vital fortress settlement known as Mayrit, sometimes recorded as Mayrit, meaning something close to place of many streams in Arabic. This outpost served a singular defensive purpose, functioning as a watchtower and early warning system protecting the great city of Toledo from northern Christian kingdoms pushing southward. But Mayrit was never merely military. Islamic engineers introduced sophisticated underground water channels called qanats, efficiently distributing water across the settlement. Mosques, markets, and organized streets gave this frontier post genuine urban character. These Islamic contributions, architectural, hydrological, and cultural, represent Madrid's true founding stones, establishing patterns of settlement that would endure for centuries. As Christian kingdoms in the north steadily pushed southward across the Iberian Peninsula, the fortress of Mayrit found itself directly in the path of this sweeping reconquest. In 1083, King Alfonso VI of Castile captured the settlement, marking a profound turning point in Madrid's story. The town transitioned from an Islamic frontier outpost into a modest Castilian community, though the change was neither sudden nor absolute. Muslim residents, known as mudajars, alongside Jewish communities and Christian settlers, continued living within the town's boundaries, creating a layered cultural tapestry that defined medieval Madrid's character. The old Islamic water management systems remained in use, and architectural influences persisted throughout the townscape. Gradually, Madrid grew into a small but functioning market town, attracting merchants, craftsmen, and administrators serving the expanding Kingdom of Castile. Royal hunting parties occasionally visited the surrounding forests, drawing noble attention toward this quietly developing settlement on the Castilian plateau. Building on its modest Castilian foundations, Madrid began asserting greater significance through the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries. The granting of royal charters formalized the town's legal standing, giving its residents defined rights and protections under Castilian law. Local governance took shape through the Council of Madrid, an administrative body that managed municipal affairs and represented the town's growing interest before the crown. Castilian royalty occasionally gathered within Madrid's walls, using the town as a convenient meeting point during their movements across the plateau. This royal attention, however infrequent, elevated Madrid's profile considerably. Meanwhile, the town's population diversified and expanded. Artisans established workshops, merchants facilitated regional trade, and clergy built churches that anchored neighborhood life. These social layers created a more complex urban fabric than Madrid had previously known. Though still overshadowed by larger Castilian cities like Toledo and Burgos, Madrid was quietly accumulating the demographic weight and institutional structure that would eventually position it for a far greater destiny. Building on Madrid's growing royal connections, the most transformative moment in the city's history arrived in 1561 when King Philip II of Spain made a decision that would permanently alter its destiny. He officially designated Madrid as the permanent capital of the Spanish Empire, a choice that stunned many who expected grander, more established cities like Toledo or Valladolid to claim that honor. Philip's reasoning was deliberate and strategic. Madrid sat almost precisely at the geographic center of the Iberian Peninsula, making it an ideal administrative hub equidistant from the empire's various regional powers. Its relative neutrality, free from the deep-rooted political loyalties of older cities, made governance more manageable. The transformation that followed was explosive. Within decades, the population surged from a modest town of roughly 30,000 to a bustling imperial capital. Grand palaces, churches, and government buildings rose rapidly. Madrid suddenly found itself commanding the most powerful empire on earth, stretching across Europe, the Americas, and beyond. With Madrid now firmly established as the imperial capital, something remarkable began to unfold within its streets and palaces. The 16th and 17th centuries ushered in what historians call the Siglo de Oro, meaning the Golden Age, a period of breathtaking cultural and artistic achievement that would echo through centuries to come. The Habsburg monarchs proved to be extraordinarily generous patrons of the arts. Philip II and his successors filled their royal collections with masterworks by Titian, El Greco, and Velázquez, laying the very foundations of what would eventually become the legendary Prado Museum's collection. Beyond painting, Madrid became a literary powerhouse. Miguel de Cervantes gave the world Don Quixote, widely considered the first modern novel, while Lope de Vega transformed Spanish theater entirely. The magnificent Plaza Mayor, completed in 1619, became the beating heart of this cultural explosion, hosting festivals, markets, and public spectacles. Yet beneath this dazzling brilliance, the Spanish Empire was quietly straining under mounting debt and political overreach. As the Habsburg dynasty faded, the War of Spanish Succession brought a new ruling family to Spain's throne. The Bourbon monarchs arrived in the early 1700s with fresh ambitions and distinctly French-influenced ideas about what a great capital should look like. No Bourbon ruler left a deeper mark on Madrid than Charles III, who reigned from 1759 to 1788. Often called the best mayor Madrid never elected, Charles launched sweeping urban reforms that fundamentally reshaped the city. Grand boulevards were carved through the urban fabric, elegant fountains were installed at major intersections, and neoclassical buildings rose across the skyline. The famous Paseo del Prado Boulevard was developed during this era, and the building that would eventually house the Prado Museum was commissioned as a natural history institution. Enlightenment thinking drove reforms in education, public health, and civic organization, transforming Madrid from a sprawling imperial city into a genuinely modern European capital shaped by reason, ambition, and architectural grandeur. The modernized Madrid that Charles III had so carefully constructed was about to face its most violent rupture yet. In 1808, Napoleon Bonaparte manipulated the Spanish crown into submission, forcing the abdication of the Bourbon monarchy and installing his brother Joseph Bonaparte as king. Madrid's citizens refused to accept this humiliation quietly. On the 2nd of May, 1808, ordinary Madrileños rose up against French imperial troops in a desperate, bloody street rebellion. The reprisals were merciless. French soldiers executed hundreds of Spanish rebels the following dawn, scenes that Francisco Goya immortalized in his devastating paintings, the 2nd of May and the 3rd of May, capturing the raw horror of occupation and resistance. This uprising ignited a fierce Spanish nationalism and launched the brutal Peninsular War, which raged for 6 years. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Ocean, Spain's American colonies watched the mother country descend into chaos, drawing powerful inspiration for their own independence movements that would ultimately dismantle the entire Spanish colonial empire. Following the Napoleonic upheaval, Madrid entered a century defined by relentless political turbulence. Constitutional crises erupted repeatedly as liberals and conservatives battled for dominance. The brutal Carlist Wars, fought over dynastic succession, tore Spanish society apart across multiple devastating conflicts. The short-lived First Spanish Republic rose and collapsed within a single year during the 1870s, before the Restoration monarchy attempted to stabilize governance through a carefully managed political system. Yet remarkably, amid this instability, Madrid physically transformed. New neighborhoods expanded beyond the old city boundaries, railway connections linked the capital to distant regions, and modernizing infrastructure reshaped daily urban life. The city's population grew substantially as industrialization drew workers inward. Intellectually, Spain's catastrophic loss of its remaining colonies in 1898 triggered profound soul-searching. The Generation of 98, a remarkable group of writers and thinkers, including Miguel de Unamuno and Pío Baroja, confronted Spain's national identity crisis with unflinching honesty, producing literature that questioned tradition while searching desperately for renewed national purpose. Building from the political turbulence of the 19th century, Spain entered the 20th century carrying deep social fractures. In 1931, the proclamation of the Second Spanish Republic brought genuine hope for democratic reform, but intense polarization between left and right quickly destabilized the new government. By 1936, Spain had descended into devastating civil war. Madrid became a symbol of Republican resistance, enduring nearly 3 years of relentless siege and aerial bombardment. The city's defenders famously declared no pasarán, meaning they shall not pass. Yet Francisco Franco's nationalist forces ultimately prevailed in 1939. Franco established an authoritarian regime, placing Madrid at its administrative heart while systematically silencing political opponents through imprisonment, execution, and exile. The city suffered profound repression under this dictatorship. International isolation following World War II deepened economic hardship, leaving Madrid impoverished and exhausted. Only gradually, through the 1950s and 1960s, did limited economic recovery begin reshaping the city's fortunes, though always under Franco's suffocating authoritarian grip. Following Francisco Franco's death in 1975, Madrid stood at a crossroads. Spain's transition to democracy, known as the Transition, unfolded with remarkable peacefulness, culminating in a new constitution ratified in 1978. The city exhaled decades of repression almost overnight. From this liberation emerged the Movida Madrileña, an explosive cultural renaissance sweeping through the late 1970s and 1980s. Musicians, filmmakers, artists, and writers flooded Madrid's streets with creativity and defiance. Director Pedro Almodóvar became the movement's most celebrated voice, capturing its electric spirit on screen. Spain's entry into the European Union in 1986 accelerated Madrid's transformation dramatically. Investment poured in, infrastructure modernized, and international connections multiplied. The city hosted the 1992 Olympic bid and welcomed major global summits, announcing itself confidently on the world stage. Today's Madrid reflects this extraordinary reinvention. World-class museums anchor the famous Paseo del Prado cultural corridor, a thriving economy attracts international talent, and a genuinely diverse population brings remarkable energy to every neighborhood, cementing Madrid's identity as a truly cosmopolitan European capital. Today, Madrid stands as a global city of over 3 million people, commanding influence across finance, tourism, art, and politics. Its world-renowned museums, bustling Gran Via, and thriving business districts attract millions of visitors annually, cementing its place among Europe's premier capitals. Yet contemporary Madrid faces real challenges. Regional political tensions, particularly surrounding Catalan and Basque autonomy debates, continue testing national unity. Economic pressures following the 2008 financial crisis left lasting scars, and urban sustainability remains an urgent priority as the city confronts traffic congestion, housing affordability, and environmental concerns. Still, Madrid endures and adapts, as it always has. From a Moorish watchtower called Mayrit to a Habsburg imperial throne, from Napoleonic battlegrounds to a vibrant democratic metropolis, Madrid's story is one of relentless reinvention. Conquest, cultural fusion, and extraordinary resilience have continuously reshaped its identity across centuries. Few cities carry such a layered, dramatic, and deeply human history, making Madrid truly one of civilization's most compelling and unforgettable urban stories.